Starting. Voila, we are live. Um, Hello, welcome. Welcome back to a very, very special episode of What's Wrong with Richard Rushfield, with a very special guest in these challenging, interesting times, as the Warner Paramount merger looms over us, and now maybe looms a step back. Who better to talk to than Mr. Monopoly himself, Matt? Mr. You should go around dressed as the Monopoly fat cat to brand yourself the Monopoly guy.
Right.
Um, we have been talking. We've been talking for a long time,
There's
but
a top hat. That's the best I
there you
can do.
go. Exactly. We'll send you a monocle.
Yeah.
The We've been talking for a long time, but we've been talking in great earnest since the Paramount Warner's deal started, and it had a major turning point. I should say Matt is way back at the beginning of this. Matt was one of the very few, very, I think single digit number of people in media who were saying that this doesn't have to happen. This could be stopped. And here we are. It is, if not stopped, delayed for the moment. So Matt, what happened last week, and what does it mean? Where are we with this whole merger?
Yeah. So it's there's a there's a short version and a long version. I'll do with a short version. So
Yeah.
last Monday, I believe the state attorneys general have jurisdiction over merger law. So usually the federal government is the one that blocks mergers, but the states can do it if they want. Also, private individuals can if they want. That's harder. But 12 state attorneys general, led by California's Rob Bonta, filed a case saying that this merger is illegal. It consolidates too much of the movie industry, too much of the cable TV industry. And then the next day, the Writers Guild, which actually has a pretty good standing, also filed a case saying this will consolidate too much buying power over screenwriters. And they asked for the a judge, don't know how to pronounce her name, Martinez Oguena, I think is, and they asked her to have a trial blocking the merger, and they said to Paramount, please don't close the merger until the trial is over, right?
Because if they close it, and then you're in the realm of having to unwind it,
Yeah,
that
that's right. So closing a merger means combining the companies, and then that means that you start your layoffs. You have two marketing departments, you turn it into one, and two operations turn into one, like, and you pay out the golden parachutes and everything. You don't have two CEOs anymore and all the rest of it, combined books and whatnot.
so
um
undoing that is really
Yeah, that's
difficult.
hard. They call it unscrambling an egg. It's not exactly like that, but it is very annoying. And also, once you start making those kinds of decisions, you start redoing CNN, you start greenlighting movies, canceling movies, whatever it is, those decisions can't be taken back. So the idea, generally speaking, with mergers, what you do is you hold the companies separate until the trial is done. And then if the judge says the merger is legal, then they do combine and they do all the things they want to do. If the judge says this merger is not illegal, or sorry, it's not legal, then they go off their separate ways, right? But you don't want to combine them. And typically, like, it's just good form. You negotiate it, but you say, all right, we'll do a trial. We'll do the trial as quickly as possible, but we still need to gather evidence and interview a bunch of people. But in this case, Paramount just said, no, we want to close. Because we have to pay, among other reasons. First of all, they're very egotistical, but second of all, they have when they were bidding with Netflix, they said, we have to pay, we will agree to pay what's called a ticking fee. So starting on October 1st of this year, they'll pay $6.9 million a day every day that the merger hasn't closed. That was a way of assuring the Warner shareholders that they could get the merger through quickly. They're like, we're so willing to get it through quickly that if we don't, we'll pay you extra, right? So they said, we want to close it now. And we'll do a trial, but we want to close it now. And the state said this is ridiculous. And they went to the judge and they said, we would like a temporary restraining order, which says you can't close it. And so they argued about that. And the standard for a temporary restraining order, which is what's a big mistake for Paramount. Um, well, first I'll say Paramount lost the TRO hearing. So the judge
Right.
granted the temporary restraining order, and then Paramount said, "Okay, fine." That the TRO lasts for 14 days, but they just said, "Okay, fine. We will go back and we will not close this merger until next June, and we will negotiate a trial date with the states."
Now,
And the
why would they do that? Take that preemptive action there.
Okay, so this is what I'll get into. So the standard for a TRO, there's multiple things. You have to prove immediate harm and so on and so forth. But you have to prove likelihood of success on the merits, right? So it's a little bit like it's a mini antitrust trial, but with no witnesses, just with some briefing and one argument. And the judge said, looking at this, I think that Paramount has a better, sorry, that the states have a likelihood of winning this trial. Now, you don't want to get a judge to say, I think the other side is right. You don't want to start, you want to let the judge not say that, so that, because once the judge starts making up their mind, it's not a good thing if you're on the wrong side. So they made a mistake by not agreeing to have a trial at some point in the future. They by being greedy, they forced the judge to rule against them. Now, if they had said, all right, we are, after 14 days, we want to go ahead anyway and close, the judge was going to hold what a hearing for what's called a preliminary injunction. And a preliminary injunction says you can't merge until the trial and an indefinite period of time. And the standard for a preliminary injunction is pretty similar to the standard for a TRO. They haven't been able to gather evidence or really interview a bunch of people. So the judge was basically just going to write a longer version to a Paramount of, you lost this. And that makes it even harder to change her mind. So we've seen this happen in a different trial called Nexstar Tenya, which has to do with local broadcasters, and that's important for reasons I'm going to get into. Um, but it's a big loss for Paramount to do this, or a tactical loss. It makes them look stupid. It makes them look unprofessional, and they conceded and said, okay, we won't close until June. They also fired or essentially demoted their lead litigator, a guy named Jeff Kessler, and brought in someone else named Beth Wilkinson to run their legal team. So
Now,
they're kind of in shambles right now. It's not over. There is going to be a trial. Paramount could very well win that trial, but it is a serious antitrust case that they now have to take on, and everybody acknowledges there are real questions of competition here that have to be answered.
so we're at the point that the states, is it a toss up who wins this? I want to get some odds here on how this.
Well, I think there's a I'd say probably a 60% chance that the merger gets blocked at this point, either through legal risk or through financing risk, because there's a small chance the financing falls apart. The financing behind this is coming from the Middle East, from the banks, and from Oracle. Oracle stock has really collapsed. Obviously there's war in the Middle East. Bankers might get nervous. I'm not saying that the financing is going to dry up, but there's a chance it could. The longer you let mergers go, the more nervous people get. But there is real legal risk here, and I think the reason I got the reason I think there's more legal risk than I initially would have surmised is because the Writers Guild came in, and the Writers Guild, I think it's going to be hard for the states to get the evidence they need. I think Paramount is going to be extremely nasty about not turning over documents, about not doing depositions. This is new for the states. They're not used to litigating merger cases. They have some people who have done it before. They hired them from DOJ and whatnot. But I think this is relatively new for them. Um, so having the Writers Guild there and having writers, you have people like Mike Schur and Adam McKay who are speaking out saying, look, I'm a important writer. I've seen how this works, and it is these mergers are a problem. You're going to have those guys getting up on the stand and saying, yeah, this merger reduces competition for my services. And I think that's a very powerful thing for a judge to hear, that the producer of these shows and movies that she knows are saying, yeah, this is a problem. And then I think also having the open letter of 5,000 artists who are in the industry saying, yeah, this is a problem, I think that's going to weigh on her.
A letter
Because,
like
yeah,
that has any legal bearing or influence or
I mean, if it's evidence, right? I mean, the thing that I think is weird about Hollywood people is, and I saw Javier Bardem. He said, "I'm not an expert, but I think this merger is a problem." And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, you are an expert. You are an important actor in no other industry would people who are important stakeholders in that industry say about their own industry, I'm not an expert, but it's like you are an expert. You make important movies and TV shows. Like, just because some random guy knows how to make like
right.
regression models or went to law school doesn't mean they know anything about the business of making movies or TV. The fact that people are in it and have been in it for decades means they do know something about how the industry works. And so I think
You
this is
know,
something that Hollywood people should get over, the fact that they're not experts when they are experts in their own industry.
well, I would say the entire drift of the trade media for the last 20 years has been to say, "Oh, you don't get this. Leave this to the analysts. Like this is a much bigger thing than you." So really,
Right. I mean, if I have a question, think about it like this: if you have a question about movies, right, or the movie business, and you had a chance of asking some random guy that graduated from some economics department and works for some consulting firm and has focused on supermarkets and or whatever, or you could ask Javier Bardem, who do you think is going to give you a more informed answer?
absolutely. But the coverage of the industry has entirely been in the grips of the financial analyst community, and
Yeah.
and their entire message is, no, you guys don't get this.
I
There's
think that's
something.
right. And I think that's what we see sort of writ broadly in America. I mean, I notice, I worked in Congress during the financial crisis, and there's just all these people that were losing their homes that were talking to us about how the banks were acting, and they they knew more about the banks than the banks did. Like, bankers didn't actually know what their own operations were doing. The people getting foreclosed on did actually know what was happening because they were being foreclosed on. Typically, people that weren't paying their mortgages didn't contact us, so these were people that were being foreclosed on even though they shouldn't have been, and these people didn't have any confidence that they knew what was happening. But the bankers had tons of confidence that they knew what was happening, even though they clearly didn't have any idea what was going on. So there's this weird thing where, people who have, who sit in front of piles of money seem to think that they know what's going on in the world, whereas people that actually do work for a living have don't have a lot of confidence that they know what's going on. And I think that needs to change.
Well,
It's
the
starting to change, right?
I mean, the effect of the financial community here was 10 years ago. They said, why are you people making movies and going to these theaters, doing all sorts of stuff? You need to start put everything into your streaming services." And then 7 years later to say, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing to your movie business? You've capsized your movie business. What the hell is going on there? So that's their
Yeah,
that's how
I know.
much they know about it.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that the what we've seen, and again, we don't know who's going to win this legal fight, but one thing that is a contact in the industry just pointed out to me is said that, like, these guys from Paramount are talking about all sorts of things. They're talking about Israel. They're talking about the antitrust law and precedent they're going to break. They're talking about how the this is all an anti-Trump plot or whatever it is. The one thing they're not talking about is what they're going to do with the merged entity. They're not talking about, look at all the cool TV shows we're going to make, the movies that we're going to build, the innovative products that we're going to come out with. It is a very strange thing that they just don't really seem excited about building a great movie studio and TV studio and distribution arm. They just seem
But it
excited about buying things. It's weird.
because it's also like, if they have great plans for the movies they're going to make, they've got a studio. They can make all of them right now. They for a lot cheaper than it costs to spend 110 billion dollars for 1% of that. They could make probably all the movies that they have in mind right now.
Well, as we know, every time someone buys Warner Brothers, it always works out. So that's maybe what they're going for.
Exactly. For look at AOL right now today. It's
Doing so well.
yeah.
I guess one question I would have for you, because I keep hearing this, is um, this notion that if Warner Brothers, if the merger falls apart, what does Warner Brothers do? They
Yeah,
need clearly need help, right? They need to merge with someone, right? So how do you think about that's what the framing is anyway?
well, I think they'll probably have some bad options, but like if the option is if the choices are certain death or door number two, which is scary, I'm going with door number two because I my the baseline for me is what as if it goes forward, their future probably looks like the last time this happened, which is what happened to Fox when it merged into Disney. And what happened to Fox when it merged into Disney was it was killed. It died. It became a brand they used to do certain things, but pretty much it was dismantled. So that's the baseline of what happens going forward until anyone tells me otherwise. Um, so what happens to Warner's after they do it? They're their own company. They've got to figure something out. They will it
Well, I mean, why is it so like they were doing really well? I mean, they have a lot of debt, but they're a profitable company. I don't understand why it's like so scary to be an independent profitable company.
um because they had a lot of debt, essentially. Because they had a lot of debt and the totem of scale that they don't have the scale to compete. That you're how can you and to some extent, I don't want to dismiss that totally as coming from nowhere because to some extent, if you are, it's all about a competition for talent and who and getting talent. And if you want to lure, you know, Margot Robbie to do a movie with you, and you're competing against Amazon, Apple, and Netflix, well, they can outbid you 100 times out of 100 if they want to. So it that idea of scale is not nothing, but it does mean we've seen, over and over again in studio history. It's just Warner Brothers not used to operating this way. You look at New Line in the '90s, or these places that couldn't compete directly with the majors, and they found other ways to do it. And the idea that HBO is such a minor player, it's going to wither and die, and it won't find people that want to work there. I I just don't find credible.
I guess that's kind of where I am. I don't understand why you would. I mean, they did. Sorry, I'm getting a plug because my
Yeah,
phone is almost out of batteries.
not at all. It's thank
So
we appreciate the tour of your office there. It's
there we go.
yeah.
I guess one. I just don't understand. Like they did very well last year. I mean, what? Why didn't they have like 7 straight weeks of number one movies? They won Oscars. You know,
Yeah.
their debt load is coming down significantly, and they'd also get a $7 billion breakup fee.
Yeah, it's the debt, and it's this idea of if you're not you've got these two major players of Disney Plus and Netflix, which are both at 200 million subscribers. So I don't quote me, I get numbers wrong all the time. And then you have these two sort of Goliaths sitting there on the sidelines, not or sort of one toe in the game with Apple and Amazon. And it's just and it's the idea of how are they going to compete with that? These you
I
have
guess
companies that
that just seems more theoretical than real. But I mean, I guess you did but I guess one question that I would have, and this is the other thing, is I know you've written about this, is it seems like the scale problem is really just a regulatory issue. It's just like without if you were to restore some form of the financial syndication decrees for streaming, right? So you just say, all right,
yeah
you can't control distribution and production. You have to choose one of them, then all of a sudden that problem goes away, and now it's just like, okay, make good movies and you make money. The
Well,
end.
that's at the base of all this. That what Paramount and Warner's are doing right now is what the system was built to do when you had the when you lost the financial syndication rules. It's everything has been moving in this direction since for 30 years, that of consolidation and making everything bigger until it all becomes one Goliath, one Leviathan that we're all absorbed into. I mean that they are going with the trend of things, and whatever happens with this merger, if you don't have some kind of FinCEN reform and create a new ecosystem of independent producers and and uh, and economy that survives outside of a single digit number of Goliaths, whatever happens here, that drift is going to continue. So that's at the bottom, the real thing that has to change.
Yeah. No, I
Let
think
me
that's
ask
really.
you a question for you uh, as a monopoly expert. So you, when they make the case that that if this happens, there's too little competition or there's too few. How how do they quantify where the line is? Like, why is four worse? Why is four? I mean, they're not going from two companies to one company. So where is it that they can say, okay, we had five companies and now we'll have four, and that's where, I mean, the line should have been drawn in my mind a
Yeah, no,
couple
this is
mergers.
this is an important and a very annoying debate. Um,
Because on
but
yeah,
I'll,
it's constantly on Twitter. People say, "Well, there'll still be five studios. There'll still be
right,
so
right,
why
right.
is
So there are different antitrust laws, and one of the laws is a monopolization law. So if you're a monopoly, then they will you can get sued for a variety of bad practices. And there are different ways of measuring whether you have monopoly power. You could do market shares. That's called indirect, because you're defining a market, and how you define a market is its own sort of economic wizardry. And then you can also say, well, do you have the ability to raise prices without losing customers, right? The there's also different markets. Like there's market for talent, there's market for exhibition. There's lots of different ways to define markets. For merger law, which is a different antitrust law, this is the one with the Clayton Act. It doesn't have to be a monopoly. It just has to show what is called, the law says that a merger that, quote, may substantially lessen competition or tend to create a monopoly, end quote. And those two prongs: may substantially less competition or tend to create a monopoly. That's pretty vague. And traditionally, it has been a practice of kind of learning uh, as as the business environment and economics changes. So traditionally, it was they just had thresholds for market share, and they just said if you have there's this old case called Philadelphia National Bank, which said if two companies merge and they collectively are more than 30% of the market, that is going to be presumptively illegal. Now you can show that in this case, we can show that it won't reduce competition, but if it's more than 30%, then that's like a threshold of, okay, this is dangerous. But there are other ways to prove it. You can show, oh, these are head-to-head competitors, or you can show, oh, these guys are. It's already a very concentrated market, right? So if it's two companies that create more than 30% of the market, but there are 20 other companies in the market, each of them has 5%. It's not particularly dangerous. But if you have just three companies in the market and one of them has 70%, the other two have 15%, and then the two with 15% merge, now all of a sudden you have a duopoly. That's much more dangerous than, so we're talking like there's just kind of rules of thumb, guidelines, but there's no like black and white here. And what you're really trying to do is you're trying to go to a judge and saying, all right, is this merger going to foreclose real opportunity for people in the business? Is it really going to raise prices to end consumers? Is it going to have Is it going to have bad effects on the market, or are there people that use both companies that are now only going to have one option? This is kind of what's called a diversion test. And so there's lots of ways to measure it. And what usually happens is the the opposition to the merger will say it's consolidating the market. Look at these market shares. They will have more pricing power. They will reduce quality. They will reduce choices. And then the merging parties will say, no, that's not true. Look at all the cool new stuff that we're going to be able to create with this combined company. And there's all of this competition that they're not accounting for. Look, these other companies, TikTok is coming into the market, or people may not go to the movies anymore. Like, there's this famous thing with breakfast cereals where they're like, oh, cereal is not the market. It's all breakfast foods. And some people don't even eat breakfast. So you have to compare cereal to people choosing not to eat breakfast. And it's like, how do you define the market? It's kind of, there's a bunch of tests that you can use, but basically it's like all law is essentially, what does a reasonable person think? That's what this is too.
So, in an interview with us and with others, California Attorney General Ron Bonta said they're not seeking a settlement, and
Right.
that's not what they're interested in. Is that is that the final word on this? As far as can the judge say, well, Paramount wants a settlement, so we order you guys to sit down and figure something out, or
Yeah, judges have a lot of discretion. So judges, they can't force you to settle, but they can say, "Wow, your case is looking really weak. I recommend you guys sit down and have a conversation." And then basically force a settlement.
so if
Um,
you ignore that and then go to trial after the judge has said that, you're taking your life in your hands.
yeah, and judges can be very nasty if they want to be, um, and there's lots of things that they can do. But so generally speaking, if a judge wants a settlement, they can make it happen. But let the complaint from the states is, alleges three markets where there is harm. One is wide release films, just films that go into lots of theaters. The other one is tentpole blockbusters, and then the third is cable channels, right? Where these guys they'll own 50 of the 130 cable channels. And what Bonta said, look, I'm fine with settlements, but you have to address the competitive harm in each of these three markets. So how do you do that while also doing a merger? I don't know. I mean, what Paramount is saying is, oh, well, we'll guarantee 30 movies a year, but that doesn't really address the competitive harm. Um, I guess they could say, oh, well, we'll buy these channels and spin off a bunch of other channels. We'll buy, Warner and maybe spin off Paramount Studio. I mean, there are things they could do that would be sort of settlements, but they would effectively make the merger null because the merger it is a competitive. The problem is it does roll up market power, and any settlement, what Paramount wants is a settlement that won't roll that back, and that is not, I think, what Bonta wants.
Um, should if the this merger doesn't happen, if there if it ultimately goes to court and found off against it found against it, can Warner's then get up and say, okay, who's next? Who wants to take another try at this? Or
They can, right? And that but I think it would be, then it becomes a question of like, all right, does somebody really want to bid and spend 2 years of their life trying to buy Warner, and which bankers are going to get behind it? Like, deals are complicated and hard to do, and when a deal falls apart, people don't immediately rush in and risk doing it. I mean, let me put it this way: when deals fall apart, people's careers end. So, like, there have been several deals that have fallen apart, and usually the CEO gets fired. It probably won't happen in this case with Paramount because, the CEO is David Ellison and they own the company. But, I don't know if it would happen with Zaslav. I don't think so. But generally speaking, there are going to be a lot of bankers that are going to say, I'm not going to get behind another Warner deal. Like, unless there's really, unless there's a very unique structure, we get paid up front, whatever it is. And I just I don't think that, like, the Penguin Simon and Schuster deal fell apart after the DOJ blocked it. That was in 2022. You have not seen an attempt to merge one of the big trade publications again. Like, it just hasn't happened. Um, there might
Here's
have been smaller mergers, but not something like that. So maybe it'll happen, but the risk is much higher once it's been blocked.
here's another possible scenario I've heard about. So, say the say a week before the trial, it looks like it's not going well for Paramount, and Paramount sees us going down in flames. Can they then have Netflix buy out their interest in this and take over the case, and then the case be dismissed, and it all go back to square one? Or how would that work?
I mean, I guess they'd have to get Warner shareholders to sign on to that. Um, so I don't see why. I mean, I guess they could, but that's really complicated. And Netflix is going to be looking at this and saying, do we want to get into this legal morass ourselves? Right.
Does the case would the case then continue, just swapping in Netflix for Warner's, or would it all just be dismissed and be go back to the beginning then?
It would it would all be dismissed and go back to the beginning. I think I'm guessing. I don't know. I'd have to think through the legal mechanics, but yeah, it would be a different deal.
Yeah. So no fun or easy outcomes for this, other than going through for Paramount, other than going through with the trial and prevailing.
I think that's right. I mean, it 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 does feel like they need it. I think the smartest thing for Paramount would be if they were just to say, okay, we're going to lobby, we're going to use our political connections to get a new FinCEN because we're set up well to compete in a world where we're the arms dealers and the streamers have to buy from us. So we're not going to go through this Warner deal, and we're going to try to, we're going to give up on Paramount Plus. Streaming's a shitty business anyway, and we're going to go back to being an arms dealer. David Ellison wants to be, a studio mogul anyway,
Yeah.
so he could just do that. But I don't know that, but they're so egotistical. I don't know if they could get themselves to that point. And that would be the way that David Ellison could become beloved in Hollywood, in my view, is if he saves the industry instead of trying to consolidate it and turn it into some weird tech play that's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, when he took over Paramount before they announced this, it was very hopeful. It was like, okay, here's the guy. He became the youngest of the studio heads. That he was going to invest a lot of money in it, and Paramount had a lot of tough times lately, and he was going to bring it through. And so if he just worked with the one studio he had, he was there. I think there was a lot of goodwill for him there, and I, I still don't totally understand why they would compromise that, but I guess goodwill is cheap in the end. The all right, a lot to think about, a lot to wrap our minds around. I just my feeling about this at this point is whatever happens, this is a victory because we've won now, because we have restored the idea that you don't just get to take a huge swath of our industry and smash it together or shake it up just because you work something out with whoever's sitting in the White House today. That there is a process and there is review, and the public has a voice in these things. And even if it ultimately goes against us, just restoring that principle, I think, is a huge victory here.
I think that's right. And what I would also say is that, well, first of all, I would like to block the merger. It would be a nice
Yes,
victory. Um,
ultimately, victory through winning would be good, but
Yeah, but I also think we're going to see, we're seeing real conversations around FinCEN, which would be, I think, which would be really important. We got to restore the competitive dynamics in the
yeah.
industry. which is so that's really healthy. The dialogue that's going on. I think we're going to learn a lot in the trial, which will be so that will be hopefully really useful. And then look, I mean, Trump is weak and getting weaker. I noticed that someone in the comments was asking about what Trump can do. I mean, Trump has done what he can do. He's given Oracle, which is the backstop of the deal, some DoD contract recently to try to halt their stock slide. Trump obviously has influence over the sovereign wealth funds that are, the Arab sovereign wealth funds that are funding this deal. But beyond that, I don't know that there's that. I mean, I guess they could try to work the Supreme Court or try to bully the courts to try to get this merger through. But he's really done all he can to get this one through. And then when the midterms, I mean, presumably the Democrats are going to take, if you just believe the polling, I'm not a prognosticator, but if the Democrats are going to take either the House or the Senate or both, you could see investigations. Like this is not a Trump is getting weaker, not stronger. So I think there's less that he can do. He's already done what he can do to move this bill, to move this merger through, and it is a really good thing. I just think for the rule of law, such as it is, to have a challenge to this merger that's taken very seriously.
And do this if there's discoveries made about the circumstances of how this deal came together and how it came to be approved, and if anything untoward is discovered, or not, I don't know of anything like that, but just hypothetically, um, does that have any impact on this case, or is that a separate thing?
Um,
Oh, it gets very complicated.
Say that one more time.
So
Let me.
let's say the Democrats take Congress, they have hearings,
Mm,
and they discover that they discover that in terms of getting the they say that Paramount said CNN will be become an
mm,
all Trump network or
right.
whatever. If they say something like that, does that have any impact on this or on the legal cases, or is that is that a separate thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is it won't have any direct impact on the legal standards, right? So it can have a political impact if you show that there's a corrupt element here. Certainly, the judge will give little weight to the DOJ's decision to let the merger through. I know that the states, one of the things Paramount would have argued is, oh, well, if the DOJ didn't see a problem, why are the states challenging it? But I think that showing that there's corruption shows that the DOJ doesn't have credibility, which is important because there have been mergers where the antitrust division approved it or didn't challenge it, and judges did rule against the states, saying, well, if the antitrust division, they're the experts, why are you, what's going on here? So that matters, but I do think that it will influence the political environment in a meaningful way. It will make it, it will make it, it will, I think it will make it a more openly political decision. Um, and, typically I think the idea is that, Wall Street is very influential in terms of influencing conventional wisdom. it, that would cut against that dynamic. So that could be helpful in terms of giving the judge more discretion on how to make the right choice here or how to make a reasonable choice here. Um, but I think that what is also likely to happen if the Democrats do investigate, and I don't know if they will, typically they're not good at investigating, but if they do, I hope they look for things that would be useful in terms of challenging the merger. So, documents that show that they are trying to exploit pricing power or they are trying to reduce bargaining power of artists, or just here are the cool things we can do with streaming, and we're going to be able to raise prices because we're going to have so much more content. Those are the kinds of things that could actually be helpful in terms of the case, just uncovering evidence. I mean, this really is about evidence more than it is anything else. So I don't, and then more broadly, I mean, I think that what they could do, and this is probably the most important thing that they could do, is they could just look into Hollywood itself and the industry, because if you want to write a new law that says we're going to separate out, we're going to do a financial syndication decrease for streaming, you have to know how the industry works. And so that's the best thing that they could do, is just learn how the industry works and start proposing new laws that will actually fix the market structure.
Uh, all right. I was going to be happy and pop the champagne, but now I am reminded that this is merely the first battle in the fight for FinCEN, which will
You
consume us.
can never be happy. You should always be bummed out. It's important. The fatalism is really is where it's at.
That's that's
No,
how
I think that
I live my life.
this is a very it's a very cool thing to see. It's the kind of thing that it doesn't always feel good, but when you look back, you'll be like, oh wow, that was the amazing moment when we were blah 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 blah. And I think this is kind of you know this is a sort of one of those pivotal moments. I also think it's like an important moment for America, because this is really an industry standing up and saying we don't like what is happening. And there are a lot of people who are noticing this all over the country in different industries. And courage is contagious. So this does, I think this will have um, good consequences that we can't foresee.
All right, here the tide turned, and we stand. I, a year ago you couldn't get anyone to talk about FinCEN. When this was announced, Variety had the headline a year ago, or February, saying it's over. So you could not get five people to come in a room publicly and have any hope at stopping this. So I, I'm going to allow myself to feel 3% good today. That's as high. That's
As, lo-
my
as long as you hate yourself, as long as you
no
still
no
hate
that,
yourself, that's
absolutely
then okay.
that
Good. All right. Good. All right.
that's the basis. Matt Stoller, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Monopoly. We're going to send you the outfit. For those of you who are new joining us, this is a presentation of the Rushfield Jamboree. It's my daily chat show. What's wrong with Richard Rushfield? If you're not, go to the Rushfield Jamboree. If you're not already a subscriber, you can sign up for free. It's all free all the time. So go there and sign up today. Glad to have you. Thank you so much for making me 3% cheery today. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon,
All right.
Matt.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care.